Have you ever watched someone completely transform the moment they step into a leadership role? You know what I'm talking about? That quiet colleague who suddenly becomes this force of nature when given authority? Well, if you've witnessed this with an INFJ, you've seen something truly remarkable. Today, we're diving deep into the 5 most shocking moves that INFJs make when they're calling the shots, moves that leave everyone around them absolutely stunned. The paradox of INFJ leadership. Most people think they've got INFJs figured out. They see the gentle nature, the preference for working behind the scenes, and the tendency to avoid conflict. So when an INFJ steps into a leadership position, folks expect more of the same: soft management, endless consensus building, and maybe a bit of indecisiveness. Boy, are they in for a surprise. The truth is, INFJs in leadership positions are like icebergs. What you see on the surface is just a tiny fraction of what's really going on underneath. These individuals possess a unique combination of intuitive insight, strategic thinking, and moral conviction that creates a leadership style unlike anything else you'll encounter in the corporate world. But here's the thing, most people don't see it coming. They're so caught up in the stereotype of the quiet, sensitive type that they miss the steel backbone and laser-sharp focus that defines an INFJ leader. When these traits finally surface, the results can be absolutely earth-shaking. The misconceptions about INFJs in authority. Society has this weird idea that effective leaders need to be loud, aggressive, and constantly visible. We picture the CEO who dominates every meeting, the manager who rules through intimidation, or the team leader who makes decisions with lightning speed and zero consultation. INFJs don't fit this mold, and that's exactly why people underestimate them. They're more likely to listen than talk in meetings. They prefer building relationships over building hierarchies. They make decisions based on values as much as data. To the untrained eye, this might look like weakness or indecision. But here's what most people miss. This approach isn't a limitation, it's a superpower. While others are busy playing political games and jockeying for position, INFJs are quietly gathering information, building trust, and developing strategies that address the real issues everyone else is too distracted to see. 1. They make lightning-fast decisions after long periods of silence. This is probably the most shocking thing about INFJ leaders, and it catches people completely off guard every single time. For weeks or even months, they'll seem indecisive about a major issue. They'll gather input from everyone, hold countless meetings, and appear to be stuck in analysis paralysis. Then out of nowhere, bam. They make a decision so swift and decisive that it leaves everyone's head spinning. And here's the kicker, it's usually exactly the right call. What's really happening during those periods of apparent indecision? The INFJ is processing information on multiple levels simultaneously. They're not just looking at spreadsheets and market data, they're considering the human impact, the long-term consequences, the ethical implications, and how the decision aligns with the organization's deeper purpose. I remember working with an INFJ director who spent 3 months seemingly waffling about whether to restructure her department. People started whispering about her leadership capabilities. Then one Monday morning, she called an all-hands meeting and laid out a complete reorganization plan that was so thorough and well thought out that it addressed concerns nobody even knew they had. 6 months later, the department was running more efficiently than it had in years. This pattern repeats itself over and over with INFJ leaders. They'll appear hesitant right up until the moment they're absolutely certain, and then they move with a speed and conviction that leaves everyone else scrambling to keep up. 2. They completely overhaul systems everyone thought were working fine. Here's another move that shocks people. INFJs will look at a system that appears to be functioning perfectly well and decide it needs to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. To everyone else, this seems like fixing something that isn't broken. But INFJs see deeper than surface-level functionality. They notice the small inefficiencies that compound over time. They see how certain processes create unnecessary stress for team members. They recognize when systems work for some people but leave others struggling. Most importantly, they can sense when current systems are preventing the organization from reaching its true potential. This ability to see beyond the obvious is what makes INFJ leaders so effective, but it's also what makes their decisions seem to come out of left field. While everyone else is focused on whether something works, INFJs are asking whether it works well, whether it works for everyone, and whether it aligns with the organization's values and goals. Take the INFJ CEO who decided to completely overhaul her company's performance review system. On paper, the existing system was fine. Employees were evaluated annually, ratings were distributed fairly, and the process was completed on time. But she noticed that the system was creating competition between team members instead of collaboration. She saw how the annual timing meant that feedback came too late to be useful. She recognized that managers were giving generic feedback because the forms didn't capture what really mattered. So she scrapped the entire thing and implemented a continuous feedback system based on personal development goals and peer collaboration. The initial reaction was panic. People thought she was creating chaos for no reason. But within a year, employee satisfaction scores had skyrocketed, and productivity increased by 23%. 3. They fire high performers who don't fit the culture. This move absolutely floors people every single time. An INFJ leader will identify someone who's crushing their performance metrics, exceeding their sales targets, or delivering exceptional results, and then let them go. To most observers, this looks completely irrational. Why would you fire someone who's contributing to the bottom line? But INFJs understand something that many leaders miss. Individual performance means nothing if it's undermining the team's overall success. They can see how a high performer's toxic attitude is gradually poisoning team morale. They notice when someone's aggressive tactics are damaging client relationships that took years to build. They recognize when individual success is coming at the expense of collaborative culture that makes everyone else more effective. This decision-making process is particularly shocking because INFJs typically avoid conflict and hate disappointing people. So when they make the tough call to let someone go, it carries extra weight. They don't make these decisions lightly. They make them when they're absolutely convinced it's necessary for the greater good. I witnessed this firsthand with an INFJ department head who had a salesperson consistently hitting 150% of her targets. This person was the star of every company meeting and the poster child for success. But behind the scenes, she was creating a culture of cutthroat competition that was burning out other team members and creating a revolving door of talented people who couldn't stand the environment. The INFJ leader tried coaching, tried reassignment, tried everything she could think of to modify the behavior. But when it became clear that the toxic culture was spreading and affecting the entire organization's ability to retain good people, she made the difficult decision to let the high performer go. The immediate reaction was shock and criticism. People questioned her judgment and worried about losing such a strong contributor. But within 6 months, overall team performance had actually improved because everyone else could focus on their work instead of navigating toxic dynamics. For they promote based on potential rather than current performance. This is another move that leaves people scratching their heads. While most leaders promote the obvious choices, the people who are already excelling in their current roles, INFJs, often promote individuals who show potential that others can't see. They'll take someone who's been struggling in their current position and elevate them to a role where they suddenly flourish. They'll identify hidden talents that previous managers completely missed. They'll see leadership potential in quiet team members who never spoke up in meetings. This happens because INFJs don't just evaluate people based on their current output. They see the person's deeper capabilities, their growth trajectory, and how they might perform in different circumstances. They recognize that someone's current performance might be limited by factors like poor job fit, lack of engagement, or unclear expectations rather than lack of ability. An INFJ manager I knew promoted an administrative assistant to a project management role, bypassing several more experienced candidates. Everyone thought she'd lost her mind. The assistant had been making mistakes in her current role and seemed overwhelmed by basic tasks. But the INFJ had noticed something others missed. The assistant's mistakes weren't due to carelessness or inability, but because she was trying to improve processes while doing her regular work. She had ideas for better systems but no outlet to implement them. She was detail-oriented and naturally organized, but her current role didn't utilize those strengths effectively. In the project management role, this person became a superstar. She implemented tracking systems that improved efficiency across multiple departments. Her attention to detail prevented costly mistakes. Her natural empathy made her excellent at managing stakeholder relationships. What looked like a risky promotion turned out to be one of the best personnel decisions the company ever made. 5. They take personal responsibility for team failures while giving credit to others for successes. This final move might be the most shocking of all because it goes against everything we expect from leaders in a competitive business environment. Most leaders are quick to take credit when things go well and equally quick to point fingers when things go wrong. INFJs do exactly the opposite, and it leaves people completely bewildered. When a project succeeds, they highlight team members' contributions. When something fails, they take full responsibility even when the failure had nothing to do with their decisions or actions. To outside observers, this looks like either false modesty or poor leadership. Why would a leader take blame for things that weren't their fault? But INFJs understand something profound about leadership. Real authority comes from taking responsibility, not from claiming credit. When team members see their leader consistently protecting them from blame while sharing the glory of success, it creates a level of loyalty and trust that's impossible to achieve any other way. This approach also reflects the INFJ's deep understanding of systems thinking. They recognize that failures are rarely the result of one person's mistake, but rather the result of systemic issues, unclear communication, or inadequate support. Instead of looking for someone to blame, they focus on what they could have done differently to prevent the problem. I remember an INFJ CEO whose company lost a major client due to a mistake made by a junior employee. In the post-mortem meeting, instead of throwing the employee under the bus, she took full responsibility for the failure. She explained that the mistake happened because she hadn't provided adequate training, clear enough procedures, or sufficient oversight. Her team was shocked. They expected her to at least share the blame with the employee who made the actual error. But by taking full ownership, she accomplished several things at once. She protected a valuable team member from public humiliation, she identified the real systemic issues that needed to be addressed, and she demonstrated the kind of leadership that made everyone want to work harder for her. The psychology behind these shocking moves? Understanding why INFJs make these seemingly counterintuitive leadership decisions requires diving into the psychology that drives their behavior. Unlike leaders who operate primarily from ego or competitive instinct, INFJ leaders are motivated by a deep sense of purpose and responsibility for others' well-being. Their dominant cognitive function, introverted intuition, allows them to see patterns and possibilities that others miss. They don't just react to current situations, they anticipate future scenarios and make decisions based on long-term consequences rather than immediate results. Their auxiliary function, extroverted feeling, compels them to consider the human impact of every decision. They can't separate business outcomes from human outcomes because, to them, sustainable business success depends entirely on human flourishing. This combination creates leaders who think in systems rather than silos, who prioritize collective success over individual achievement, and who understand that short-term pain is often necessary for long-term gain. How these moves create exceptional organizational culture. The shocking leadership moves that INFJs make don't just achieve immediate results. They create organizational cultures that outlast any individual leader. When team members experience leadership that prioritizes their growth, protects their dignity, and makes decisions based on values rather than just profits, it fundamentally changes how they approach their own work. Organizations led by INFJs often develop cultures of psychological safety where people feel comfortable taking risks, admitting mistakes, and proposing innovative ideas. They create environments where collaboration thrives because competition is focused on external challenges rather than internal politics. These cultures tend to attract and retain high-quality talent because word gets around about organizations where people are truly valued and developed. They also tend to be more resilient during difficult times because team members are emotionally invested in the organization's success rather than just collecting a paycheck. The long-term impact of INFJ leadership decisions? The truly remarkable thing about the shocking moves that INFJ leaders make is how they tend to look even better with time. Decisions that seemed questionable or risky in the moment often prove to be exactly what the organization needed. The systems they overhaul become more efficient and humane. The people they promote based on potential become exceptional performers. The high performers they let go are eventually recognized as having been toxic influences. The responsibility they take for failures creates trust that pays dividends for years to come. This pattern occurs because INFJ leaders are playing a longer game than most people realize. They're not just trying to hit next quarter's numbers or look good in next month's performance review. They're building sustainable organizations that can thrive over the long term while treating people with dignity and respect. Common reactions to INFJ leadership moves? Understanding how people typically react to these shocking leadership moves helps explain why they seem so surprising. Most people are accustomed to leadership styles that are more predictable and conventional. When an INFJ does something unexpected, it challenges people's assumptions about how leadership should work. The initial reaction is often confusion or concern. People worry that the leader doesn't understand the situation or is making emotional decisions rather than logical ones. They may question the leader's competence or wonder if they're in over their head. But as the results of these decisions become apparent, the reaction typically shifts to respect and admiration. People begin to understand that what looked like risky or counterintuitive moves were actually sophisticated strategies based on deeper insight and longer-term thinking. This pattern of initial doubt followed by growing respect is one of the hallmarks of INFJ leadership. It reflects the fact that their decision-making process operates on multiple levels simultaneously, considering factors that others don't even recognize as relevant. Why INFJs struggle to explain their leadership decisions? One reason these moves seem so shocking is that INFJs often struggle to articulate their reasoning in ways that satisfy others' need for logical explanations. Their decision-making process involves intuitive leaps and value-based considerations that don't translate easily into the kind of data-driven justifications that most organizations expect. When asked to explain why they're promoting someone based on potential rather than performance, they might struggle to point to specific metrics that support their decision. When questioned about why they're overhauling a functional system, they may not be able to quantify the inefficiencies they're sensing. This communication challenge can make their decisions seem even more mysterious and shocking. People assume that if a leader can't provide a clear, logical explanation for a decision, the decision must be based on emotion or poor judgment rather than sophisticated analysis. The hidden strengths of INFJ leadership. The shocking moves that INFJ leaders make reveal hidden strengths that aren't immediately obvious to casual observers. Their ability to see potential in people, identify systemic issues, and make decisions based on values creates competitive advantages that are difficult for other organizations to replicate. Their focus on developing people rather than just utilizing them creates deeper talent pools and more innovative solutions. Their willingness to address systemic issues prevents small problems from becoming major crises. Their value-based decision-making creates authentic cultures that resonate with customers and clients. These strengths don't always show up in traditional leadership assessments or performance metrics, which is why INFJ leaders are often underestimated. But organizations that recognize and leverage these strengths tend to outperform their competitors over the long term. Challenges INFJ leaders face. Despite their effectiveness, INFJ leaders face unique challenges that can make their shocking moves even more surprising to others. They often struggle with self-doubt, questioning their decisions even when they're making the right calls. They may be reluctant to assert their authority, preferring to influence through collaboration rather than command. They also tend to take criticism very personally, especially when their values-based decisions are questioned. This can make them seem defensive or overly sensitive when people challenge their leadership moves. Understanding these challenges helps explain why INFJ leaders sometimes seem to come out of nowhere with decisive action after long periods of apparent hesitation. They're often battling internal doubts while simultaneously processing complex information and considering multiple stakeholder perspectives. How to recognize and support INFJ leaders? If you're working with an INFJ leader, understanding their unique approach can help you better support their efforts and prepare for their surprising moves. Instead of judging their decisions based on conventional leadership wisdom, try to understand the deeper logic behind their choices. Pay attention to the values and principles that guide their decision-making. Notice how they prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term gains. Observe how they consider human impact alongside business metrics. Supporting INFJ leaders means being patient with their decision-making process, trusting their judgment even when you don't immediately understand their reasoning, and helping them communicate their vision to others who may be skeptical. The future of INFJ leadership. As organizations increasingly recognize the importance of emotional intelligence, authentic leadership, and sustainable business practices, the shocking moves that INFJ leaders make may become less shocking and more standard. Their approach to leadership aligns well with emerging trends toward more humane, purpose-driven management styles. However, their ability to see beyond surface appearances and make counterintuitive decisions that prove to be exactly right will always set them apart. They'll continue to surprise people because they operate from a different paradigm than most leaders, one that prioritizes depth over speed and sustainability over immediate results. Conclusion: the quiet revolution of INFJ leadership. The 5 shocking moves that INFJs make when they're in charge: lightning-fast decisions after long deliberation, overhauling systems that seem fine, firing high performers who don't fit the culture, promoting based on potential rather than performance, and taking responsibility while giving credit to others represent a quiet revolution in leadership thinking. These moves shock people because they challenge conventional wisdom about how leaders should behave. They demonstrate that effective leadership doesn't always look like what we expect it to look like. Sometimes the most powerful moves are the ones that seem counterintuitive at first glance. INFJs in leadership positions prove that you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be the most influential. You don't have to dominate every conversation to drive meaningful change. You don't have to sacrifice your values to achieve business success. Their approach to leadership offers a different model, one based on deep insight, authentic relationship building, and long-term thinking. It's a model that creates sustainable success while treating people with dignity and respect. The next time you see an INFJ step into a leadership role, Don't be fooled by their quiet demeanor or collaborative approach. Behind that gentle exterior is a strategic mind capable of moves that will leave everyone around them absolutely stunned. And more often than not, those shocking moves will turn out to be exactly what the organization needed. The question isn't whether INFJs can be effective leaders. They absolutely can. The question is whether the rest of us are ready to recognize and appreciate a leadership style that operates by different rules but achieves exceptional results. The shocking moves they make aren't random or emotional. They're the result of a sophisticated understanding of human nature, organizational dynamics, and what it really takes to create lasting positive change. So the next time you witness one of these shocking INFJ leadership moves, instead of questioning their judgment, pay attention to the results. You might just learn something that transforms your own understanding of what effective leadership really looks like.